Racism exposed, amazing moment as a brave black veteran turns the tables on violent officer. The sun beat down on the small Pennsylvania town, the sweltering heat palpable as Charles, a 35-year-old black veteran, took a deep breath outside the hardware store. Just back from a tour overseas, his muscles ached, but it wasn't just the physical strain, memories of war clawed at him. Each sound a car passing, children laughing felt like shards of glass scraping against his heart. He had fought for this country, yet here he stood, feeling like an outsider. Mia, his estranged daughter, lived nearby, caught in the emotional crossfire of his service and struggles. She was vibrant and bursting with questions he didn't know how to answer. He often imagined her smile as the light breaking through his darkness, but the thought also weighed heavy on him. Would she understand? Would she forgive him for the lost years? As he returned inside, a burst of laughter from the lunch crowd strolled through the open door. The hum of chatter felt comforting in a town where neighbors shared barbecues and laughs, yet the undercurrents of tension simmered beneath that facade. While Charles stocked shelves, Officer Reed, a local cop known for his aggressive tactics, appeared in the doorway. The muscles in Charles's neck tightened. He felt the stares of the few customers left, their eyes wide with apprehension. "Hey! You got a problem?" Reed barked, eyes shooting daggers. The officer approached Anthony like a gallant knight charging a dragon. Charles felt his heart racing, breath catching in his throat. He simply wanted some air. Instead, he was thrust into a confrontation he had hoped to avoid. "Just taking a break, officer," Charles replied, steadying his voice. But the officer's expression hardened, suspicion dripping off every word that followed. This wasn't about the break, this was about him. "I'm gonna need to see some ID." Reed shouted, and the tension grew thick enough to cut with a knife. Bystanders edged closer, some stepping back, phones rising to capture the unfolding drama. Fingers trembling, Charles fished out his wallet. He felt their eyes, searching, judging. Underneath that heavy stare, he remembered his father's words: stay calm, stay dignified. No matter their bias, he wouldn't lose himself. "Is this really necessary?" he asked, his voice strong but calm. He met Reed's gaze, searching for humanity. Would the officer find it within himself to see a person instead of a silhouette of prejudice? In that moment, the crowd held its breath. Silence fell, broken only by distant cicadas, the heat pulsating around them. Then, without warning, Mia burst through the crowd, her brown eyes wide, bewildered. "Dad!" she called, pushing through the onlookers, desperation in her voice. The gaze between father and daughter held a storm of emotions: fear, love, confusion. In that instant, the world shifted. Would Officer Reed allow his biases to overshadow this moment of connection? Would he recognize the humanity in Charles? Would Mia's presence act as a bridge into understanding? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment hung heavy in the air, a fragile bridge between two worlds colliding. Would Officer Reed have the courage to confront his biases, or would this escalate beyond control? Mia's fear mingled with the town's apprehension, and in that poignant silence, the possibility of change flickered on the horizon. What would it take to turn the tide, to redefine their fates in a world riddled with division? Mia's voice sliced through the tension like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. She shoved her way to Charles, reaching him just as uncertainty crackled in the air. Her small frame trembled, eyes darting between her father and the looming figure of Officer Reed. "Dad, what's happening?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, though the urgency surged like a rising tide. Charles felt the warmth of her presence, a reminder of everything he fought for, pulling him back from the brink of despair. He swallowed hard, unsure how to shield her from the chaos unfolding. "Just a misunderstanding, Mia," he replied, forcing a calmness into his tone. But deep inside, a storm brewed. Reed snorted, the disdain clear on his face. "A misunderstanding? I see a man here, in my town, causing trouble. Seems he has something to hide." The crowd shifted uneasily. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers, faces clouded with confusion and anger. Some held their phones, capturing the moment, while others exchanged whispered opinions that floated like bitter smoke. This was more than a routine stop. This was an indictment of a life marked by injustice. "Enough!" Mia suddenly shouted, surprising everyone, including her father. "He's not causing trouble. He just came back from serving our country." Stepping forward, she placed herself between the officer and Charles, as if to shield him from the weight of Reed's hostility. The officer's brow furrowed, sarcastic amusement flickering for just a moment. "And do you think that gives him a pass? This isn't a war zone. It's my beat, and I'm just doing my job." Mia's heart raced in her chest, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "He deserves respect," she insisted, vulnerability in her voice. "He deserves a chance. He is my dad. Do you even know what it's like to come back?" Every soul nearby tethered their gaze on the battlefield formed from emotion. For Charles, Mia's voice was a beacon of hope cutting through his confusion. She had grown into a formidable woman, bold and fierce, yet the fear in her eyes told a stark story what would happen next. "Just let him go, officer. You're not helping anything," another voice chimed in from the crowd, an older man stepping forward, a neighbor who had watched Charles grow up. The words echoed like a rallying cry, creating cracks in Reed's armor of bravado. "Don't be so quick to side with a criminal," Reed retorted, though the resolve in his voice wavered, uncertainty creeping in. "Criminal?" Charles said, finally finding his voice again, a depth of sorrow threading through his words. "I fought for your right to stand there and speak out. I didn't ask to be judged the moment I arrived home. Moments like this could ignite change or drown in resentment." The pendulum hung low, teetering. Would Reed see the man before him or remain trapped in the expectations of his badge? With the town's collective breath held tight, Mia's fierce gaze met her father's. "We can't let this happen. Not again." As whispers louder than thunder rang out in the crowd, the air thick with unease and a spark of solidarity, it was clear that something had shifted. The moment held infinite potential, but how would it unfold? A magical realism stirred in those uncertain feelings. Something had to give. Would Reed recognize the vow of humanity standing in front of him, or were they trapped in a cycle from which there was no escape? The crowd shifted again, sensing an answer was poised on the edge of revelation. Would this be the moment that changed everything, or just a prelude to deeper struggles ahead? Mia stood resolute, her heart pounding like a drum within the silence that enveloped them. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that mingled with the anxiety threaded through the gathering crowd. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes resting on her, a mixture of sympathy and fear, but she pressed on, fueled by an overwhelming need to protect her father. "Officer Reed," Mia continued, her voice steady despite the tremors beneath, "you say you're doing your job, but what about his life? What about the man who gave everything just to come back here?" She glanced back at Charles, whose eyes reflected a complex mingling of pride and pain. Reed shifted his stance, unease cracking the hardened facade he wore like armor. "Served your country, huh? And look where it got you," he sneered, arms crossed defiantly. It felt like a vicious jab, and gasps rippled through the crowd as they clutched their breaths. "Enough!" Came another voice, this time female, a middle-aged woman who stepped forward with fire in her eyes. "I know Charles. He's not a danger to anyone. You're quickly becoming the problem here, officer." The tension crackled with a furious intensity as more voices joined in, echoing support, solidifying the fortification around Charles and Mia. Solidarity bloomed like wildflowers after the rain, vibrant and unexpected. Mia's right. Another neighbor called out, fists clenched and heart racing. This isn't about chaos from him. It's about how you've chosen to handle it, officer. We're tired of people being labeled because of the color of their skin. A loud cheer erupted from some in the crowd, support cascading like a wave, rolling over the fearful murmurs. "Stand down, Reed," barked a voice from the back. It was Officer Harris, a colleague who had always maintained a good relationship with the community. "This isn't the way to handle it, and you know it." For the first time, the officer looked smaller, corners of his bravado fraying. He glanced from Mia to Charles, back to the neighbors eager to defend them, searching the faces for something an ally, perhaps. But there was none. The crowd began to chant Charles's name, igniting a warmth that eclipsed the moments of fear. "Charles! Charles! Charles!" surged forth, a rhythmic pulse that pushed against Reed's rigidity. "Mia!" Charles finally said, emotion threatening to drown him. "You don't have to do this. It's not worth it." He wanted to protect her, shield her from the firestorm, but she stood firm, shine in her eyes undiminished. "It is worth it." Mia took a deep breath, grounding herself as she faced Reed. "What's worth fighting for is respect and humanity. Every single time we keep quiet, we lose a piece of ourselves, Dad. I want to be silent." The words hung in the air, heavy with conviction. Suddenly, the bickering stopped. Even Reed faltered, the storm within him conflicting with the weight of the moment. "Let us not escalate," he started, though the fire within had dimmed considerably as he took in the rallying cries around him. But could this really be a turning point? Would he finally listen? Mia leaned closer to her father, their eyes locking in a silent promise. "Whatever happens next, we face it together. We will not be powerless again." Time hung suspended, emotions swirling like fog. Each heartbeat echoed a reality far deeper than words could convey, a relentless struggle between hope and despair. Suddenly, the officer's radio crackled, breaking the heavy silence. "Reed, you there? We have a situation downtown." The weight of that interruption hung like a gavel, poised to decide the fate of this moment. Would Reed abandon this scene, or confront the reality of his biases? Mia held her breath, knowing that the outcome of this confrontation could unfold in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Was this the dawn of a transformation or just another continuation of the struggle? Charles's voice trembled against the silence, piercing through the crowd's collective hope. "Don't let it end like this. Not again." Would they find the courage to stand together, or would doubt drive them apart once more? The radio crackled again, and Reed's expression shifted like a storm cloud breaking under pressure. He looked at his device, then back at the crowd, disciples of justice defying his authority. I have to check on this," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Mia felt the tension swell, a rope drawn tight. Would the officer really turn away? A mixed sense of urgency and hope flickered in the air. She stepped closer to Charles, squeezing his hand, reminding him that they were tethered together in this fight. "Go ahead, Reed," someone shouted. "Run, just like the coward you are." The crowd erupted into another wave of chants, their unity vibrating through the ground beneath them. The momentum was alive, fierce, and intoxicating. This moment could be the spark, but just as Reed made a move to step back, Officer Harris intervened, voice steady and calm. "This isn't about running away, Reed. It's about standing up and choosing to be part of the solution. If you leave now, well, it says a lot about you." Mia's heart raced with the raw energy of the unfolding drama. She moved closer to the front, the heat from bodies around her igniting a fire within. "We all deserve respect. You may have the badge, but we have the truth," she called, her voice ringing clear. Reed faltered again, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. He stood between worlds, caught in the tide of a community that had started to push back against the currents of his prejudice. Slowly, a faint glimmer of doubt crept into his gaze as he searched the faces her father, their neighbors, friends he once considered allies. Maybe, Mia urged, maybe it's time to look inside yourself, to ask what it is you truly stand for. In this moment, who do you want to be? There was a breath, heavy with stakes, as the crowd waited in silence. Reed's hardened mask began to crack. In that charged moment, a child from the crowd stepped forward, no older than 10, clutching a paper with the words "Justice for All" scrawled in bright crayon. The innocence in his wide eyes held a mirror up to Reed, an echo of vulnerability that even he could see. With barely a breath, the child offered the paper to Reed, his small hand shaking. "Please, can you help?" The words pierced the moment, raw and unadulterated. Mia held her breath, caught in the gravity of hope that suspended just above despair. Reed's brow tightened, and for a brief instant, Mia thought she saw something shift. Perhaps it was recognition, perhaps consideration, but then, a shout suddenly pierced the anticipation. "What are you doing standing there? Handle your business, Reed." The voice belonged to someone off to the side, and within seconds, accusations floated through the air, seeking to resettle the grains of dread. "I'm not here to play games." Reed howled, clamping down on his grip around authority, a man unwilling to let go. The moment fractured, tension snapping like a taut cable under pressure. "Games?" Mia gasped, the sting of anger mixing with her desperation. "This is our lives, officer. These aren't just rallies or protests. This," she gestured to the whole crowd, heart racing, "this is our reality." And the chant resumed, louder, pushing against the rigidity of the air. Reed's eyes darted around him, uncertainty palpable. The child still stood there, unwavering, and Mia could see something shifting within Reed. But would he choose to change? Then, for a fleeting moment, Mia swore she saw him take a step back, as though contemplating the fragility of his armor. If he stepped down now, would it mean he acknowledged the community's strength? "Please," Mia whispered. "Don't this moment be another wasted chance." But was it already too late? As the crowd surged with intensity, the question loomed: would Reed let the power of community win, or would he double down on the very system they all wished to dismantle? The moment hung dangerously, the world spinning around them as fate waited for a choice. What would Reed's decision reveal about him and ultimately, about all of them? The air felt thick, almost electric as Reed stood at the crux of his decision. The world around him churned, chants rising and falling like ocean waves. Eyes upon him, he could sense the weight of their desperation, the pulse of history beating through this crowd. Glances flicked between Mia and the child holding the crayon note, as if they were threads weaving an intricate tapestry of hope and challenge. "Mia," Reed faltered, the name slipping from his lips like a whisper. "I never meant to." But before he could finish, the piercing voice echoed again. "Reed! Get it together." Its sharpness cut through the fragile moment, puncturing any remaining doubt in the minds of those who might still believe in him. Mia watched helplessly as the tension twisted tighter. The reassuring grip of Charles felt solid in her hand, and she lingered on that sense of unity amidst chaos. "We are here for change," she shouted, a part of her hoping that their collective voices could drown out the critics. "You're not alone, Reed. You never were." Reed turned, eyes scanning the crowd that was gathering strength instead of dividing. They were there as witnesses, steeling him for whatever would come next. He could feel his heart thumping in his chest, each beat echoing the struggle they all faced. It was like a tug-of-war between his duty and the cries for justice rising all around him. Then, surprisingly, a figure stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, a tall man with an air of authority and history about him. Reed recognized him. It was Mr. Thompson, a Vietnam veteran from their community, known for his unyielding spirit in times of peril. "Reed!" Mr. Thompson's voice resonated like a cannon shot, commanding immediate attention. "You wear that badge as a protector of the people. But are you protecting or oppressing?" His gaze penetrated through Reed, igniting the sparks of recognition. "This isn't just some clash of egos. This is a fight against injustice. Stand with us and be the change. Be a hero instead of a hate-filled shield." The crowd turned their eyes to Reed, waiting, anticipation swelling as their collective breath held. The juxtaposition of the crayon drawing and the battle-scarred veteran brought forth an aching realization. Reed felt the tide of history whispering in his ear, asking him to embrace a path of valor rather than one of conformity. "What if," Reed began, voice cracking slightly as every head inclined toward him, "what if I'm ready to stand for you?" The words felt foreign, like a flint sparker igniting the dark. He recalled moments of camaraderie with these people. How their hardships echoed through his own family's struggles. Mia's heart leapt. Could it be? Could he truly be reconsidering? But the moment wavered again. The challenges of his peers loomed high above him, disrupting this tapestry they were weaving. "You'd turn against us, after everything?" A voice shouted, laced with fear and resentment. Others murmured, amplifying the doubt planted inside Reed's mind. Every ounce of his strength now rested on a knife's edge. The crowd held their breath as Reed wrestled with fears, regrets, and the pull of a deep-seated desire for change. "Can I undo the damage I've done?" he whispered almost to himself. Mia felt the surge of hope mingle with the pain of uncertainty, realizing how fragile this moment had become, and how critical the next steps would be. The air was electric with potential, and everyone stood ready to hear what came next, yet, as Reed's thoughts swirled, a sudden thought struck him, a path that could reshape everything. In this moment, Reed breathed, the trembling in his voice no longer just fear but a rush of conviction. "I want to listen, I want to fight with you." But would they believe him? Would the hurt and the moments of silence forgive someone like him? As the crowd surged with a mix of hope and skepticism, one question hung in the air: could Reed truly commit to this new path, or would he falter beneath the weight of the legacy that had always defined him? The next step loomed, ready to change everything. Could they embrace the unknown together, or would the barriers of distrust remain unbroken? The crowd held its breath as Reed spoke. For a fleeting moment, time seemed to stretch, a fragile silence swallowing the world around him. Eyes locked on his, the weight of their fears and hopes mingled in the air. Each heartbeat thundered louder than the rumble of discontent that had sparked just moments before. "Reed, you don't mean that?" someone from the back shouted. The words slipped through the crowd like a chill, igniting an undercurrent of skepticism that threatened to explode into outbursts. Reed steeled himself, desperate to push through the doubt swirling in front of him. "I do," he replied, voice firmer now, like a tree bending in the wind but refusing to break. "I want to listen to you all, to understand not just what you want, but what you need." A murmur cascaded through the gathering, people exchanging glances, uncertain yet intrigued. Mia felt her heart race. Was the tide actually turning? "Reed," Mr. Thompson called out again, stepping closer, an anchor amidst the storm. "Every step taken in this battle must be towards the truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. Can you promise to not just listen, but to act?" Reed felt a tightening in his throat. The promise to act seemed heavier than the badge he wore. Yet, looking into the faces before him, the mothers, the fathers, the children, he saw reflections of his own fears and hopes. "I promise," he finally said, the words pushing their way through the weight of his past mistakes. "Then start here," shouted a woman in the front, pointing to a pair of police officers standing at the edge of the demonstration, their presence a reminder of the very oppression Reed had vowed to combat. "Gather your support, not just from those in uniforms, but from those who wear their struggles on their faces every day." Reed nodded, understanding the enormity of the challenge laid before him. He could feel the tension in the air tighten, as if the fabric of expectations was knitting itself together for a new future. And yet, a part of him felt small amidst the magnitude of it all. Could he really lead the charge against that which he had once represented? "Let us talk to them." Mia's voice sliced through his thoughts, her determination shining brightly. She glanced at the police officers, a mix of conviction and concern crossing her face. For a moment, the pieces started to align, a plan forming in the chaos. As Reed turned toward the officers, anxiety surged through him. The voices in his head warned him, a tight knot forming in his stomach. But he pushed forward, chest swelling with purpose. "Listen up," he called out, raising his voice. "We've got a lot to sort through. It's time to discuss what we're all feeling." As he stepped closer, he realized he was not just confronting the officers, he was facing his own past as a symbol of authority. The atmosphere shifted, tension crackling around them. The officers shifted uneasily, their expressions a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Reed raised his hands, not in submission, but in solidarity. In that instant, something changed. The crowd instinctively moved closer, watching and waiting, breath suspended as if the moment itself was too precious to taint with doubt. "Will you all help me?" Reed implored, eyes darting back to his community. "Can we engage in a dialogue, one that breaks down walls and builds understanding?" A wave of support emerged, voices uniting as people nodded, murmurs of agreement rippling like an electric current through the crowd. Yet as he stood at the forefront of this brave new moment, an unsettling realization hit him. The very officers he aimed to approach embodied the systemic failures he had once upheld. Could they truly listen? Could they grow from this moment? "Reed!" someone shouted again, slicing through his thoughts. "What if they refuse?" The question hung heavy, threatening to upend all hope. Every eye was upon him, a challenge resting on his shoulders. This was just the beginning, and the stakes were impossibly high. With a deep breath drawing strength from the people beside him, he took a step closer to the officers, ready to face whatever would come next. Because at that moment, he knew, the real fight was only beginning. How far would he go to confront the truth? Everyone waited, breaths held in anticipation, as Reed prepared to take on the world that had once defined him but was now ripe for transformation. Would he be able to win hearts, or would he be met with resistance? The crowd shifted subtly, energy humming like a power line ready to spark. Reed felt every pair of eyes boring into him, their hopes hanging by a thread as he stood before the officers. His heart raced. Would they hear him, or would they turn him away? He took a breath, steadying himself against the fear threatening to swallow him whole. "We're not here to assign blame," he said, his voice calmer than he felt. "We're here to talk about how we can change things together." One of the officers, a tall man with a weary expression, stepped forward. Reed noticed the tension in his jaw. "We aren't the enemy," the officer said, a hint of desperation peeking through his tough exterior. "We joined this force to protect and serve." Murmurs flickered through the crowd, curiosity mingling with hesitation. Reed nodded slowly, recognizing the struggle on the officer's face. "Then let us talk about what protecting and serving truly means. For everyone." The second officer, younger with nervous eyes, shifted uneasily. "What do you want us to say?" "We're following orders." The words carried a weight, a resignation that made Reed's chest ache. "Is that enough?" Reed challenged gently. "Hiding behind orders won't solve anything. We need to listen to each other. We need to build trust." Ms. Thompson stepped forward, her voice cutting through the growing murmur. "You think we haven't been listening? You think we haven't been afraid? My son fears for his life every time he steps out the door and sees a badge." The younger officer flinched at her words, meeting her gaze. I can't imagine what that feels like." He paused, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his shield. "But we're really trying isn't good enough anymore," Reed insisted, feeling the power of the collective energy around him. "We've been at the sidelines for too long waiting for change. We need action." A man from the crowd yelled out, "What about accountability? How can we trust you when it's been so long since any justice has been served?" His voice rang out like a clarion call, drawing more supporters out of the woodwork. Reed's heart sank slightly. This was the crack in the foundation. He needed this moment to turn from doubt to clarity, he needed everyone to realize they could forge a path together. "Accountability starts with each of us," he said firmly. "We need to hold each other accountable. Lawmakers, officers, civilians. No one is above it. The officers exchanged glances, uncertainty swirling around them. Reed watched, his chest tightening. Can you commit to this? To being part of this new conversation? Change doesn't come easy, the older officer said slowly, but it's clear something has to give. The hesitation hung like a heavy blanket. The air grew thick with expectation. Reed could almost see the gears turning in the officers' minds. There was a heartbeat of silence before the younger one spoke again, softer this time. Maybe we can start with a community meeting. That glimmer of hope sparked across the crowd. Reed felt a swell of pride and relief. Yes. Yes, that essay start. Voices began to rise, cheering and clapping, a wave of encouragement rolling through the air, but right then, as the crowd surged forward, someone shouted from the back, "What if they don't come? What if they bail on us again?" The laughter faded, replaced with a serious stillness. That looming question turned the tide of victorious momentum into uncertainty. Reed felt a chill creep up his spine. They were at a crucial crossroads. Could they pull through? He took a moment, searching the faces before him, until his gaze landed on Mia. Her eyes sparkled with hope, and he knew they had to push forward, even in doubt. This was a fragile turning point, and now it was up to him to navigate the unknown. "Let us not let fear lead us backward," he said resolutely, sensing a fire igniting in the crowd again. "We've barely scratched the surface of what's possible here. Will you stand with me?" With a chorus of cries and determined nods, the crowd rallied again. But as the last cheer echoed in the air, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows, someone who might tip everything back into chaos. "Let us see how long this unity lasts," the figure smirked, stepping forward with an aura of authority. Reed felt a ripple of unrest flash through the crowd as the figure stepped into the light. Familiar yet feared, it was Raymond, a local activist known for his fiery speeches and confrontations. But tonight, he felt different, more charged. The air thickened, each heartbeat echoing the uncertainty swirling around them. "Raymond," Reed called, desperately searching for a way to bridge the widening chasm between hope and despair. "We're in the middle of something important here." "Oh, I see it clear enough," Raymond sneered. "You think they'll hear you? Actions speak louder than words, my friend. And I doubt their promises mean a damn thing." The crowd's energy shifted again. Doubts crept in like shadows. Reed stepped forward, trying to maintain control. "No, listen to what, Reed?" Raymond cut him off, his voice rising. "To more lies and empty words. We've been hearing the same story for years, and nothing changes. You want accountability? Show me. Show all of us." The crowd murmured, and Reed's heart raced. He understood that the anger bubbling beneath the surface was valid. These were people tired of waiting, tired of hopes dashed, of assurances broken. "Raymond, if we can just take a moment," Reed tried again, with a dismissive wave. Raymond turned to the crowd. "Do you really think these officers will change? Who is to trust them? They wear badges while our brothers lie in graves. They owe us more than a conversation." Reed felt the world closing in. He looked to the officers, searching for any sign they'd stand up and say something. But the younger officer was just as tense, his jaw clenched. Reed sensed time ticking away. This moment could slip through his fingers like sand. "We cannot let anger tear us apart." Reed shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "We need unity, not division. Yes, they've hurt us, but we have to show that we're ready to build something new. Are we just going to let hatred win?" A silence fell, thick and heavy. The crowd shifted slowly, unsure. Reed could see the flickers of doubt extinguishing the flames of hope. But then Ms. Thompson stepped forward again. Her face, usually filled with fear, now radiated courage. "Listen to Reed," she said firmly. "We've lived in pain for too long. If we turn back to division now, we're letting them win. We need to be the change we want to see." Her words hung in the air, igniting a spark. A few more voices began to echo her sentiments, calling out words of hope and resilience. Reed saw eyes softening, fists unclenching. But just as the tide began to shift, Raymond scoffed. Naive. You really think an officer's word will mean anything? What happens when they go back to their precinct, and we're left standing with nothing but empty promises? Reed locked eyes with Raymond, heart pounding. But what if this is the moment it changes? What if we stand together and hold them accountable? What if we demand more than just words? If we walk away now, if we let them divide us, what have we gained? Raymond's smirk faded as uncertainty flickered across his face. Was there something more here, a chance of freedom beyond this moment? The crowd began murmuring again, but this time it felt different. Less divided, more united. Reed took a breath, hoping this unease could transform into solidarity. We need each other now more than ever. Will you join me? A chorus of voices filled the air, answering his call. They wouldn't abandon hope, not now. They must keep pushing for change. But as their voices rose, Reed felt a tension akin to a frayed wire ready to snap. Just then, a shout cut through the air, what if the officers aren't really with us? Reed's stomach dropped. The moment was fragile, they stood on the brink of something transformative or destructive. Which way would they fall? The shout hung in the air, vibrating with raw energy. Reed turned toward the voice, his heart racing. The question had pierced deep, unraveling the unity they had just started to weave. What do you mean? He called out, scanning the crowd for the source. A man stepped forward, his arm raised high. It was Jamal, a veteran with a steely gaze and a presence that commanded attention. I mean, think about it. Jamal said, his voice steady yet charged. We're out here fighting for justice, but who is standing beside us? What if they're just here to control us? It's always been this way. Reed swallowed hard. Jamal's point struck a nerve. The officers stood to the side, unease etched on their faces. Was their presence truly for support, or merely a facade to maintain control? Look, we've faced violence before, and it's always the same story, Jamal continued, pacing slightly, gathering his thoughts. They come in smiling, promising change, but when it gets real? When the heat is on? Do you think they'll protect us, or each other? Reed caught Ms. Thompson's gaze, her eyes wide with concern. The atmosphere thickened, and tension simmered beneath the surface. He could feel emotions boiling, threatening to overflow. Raymond was right about one thing, Jamal said, nodding toward the activist. Words aren't enough. We need action. We can't just let them stand there looking good for the cameras while we fight for crumbs. The crowd began to shift uneasily, whispers of doubt crawling between the tension. Reed felt the weight of that doubt, climbing like a wall around them. Jamal, we have to hold them accountable too. Accountable for what? Jamal shot back, his voice rising, demanding to be heard. For what they've done. For their silence. Or for their empty promises. The stark lines drawn in the sand grew more distinct. Reed could feel the divide growing. What about if we try to build bridges? He asked, hoping to draw them back together. Jamal paused, and for a moment, behind the tension, something else flickered in his eyes, perhaps doubt, perhaps hope. What happens when we realize those bridges are nothing but mirages? Reed took a step forward, desperate to connect again. If we don't stand up together, we're ready to lose everything. This is our chance. What we need is to come together in real, tangible ways. To demand our voices be heard. Just as he finished, a voice from the back rang loud through the crowd. What if we can't trust them? The question seemed to reverberate, bouncing from person to person, igniting a flurry of responses. Reed felt his heart hammer against his ribs. Was everything he had worked for slipping away? Look! Jamal shouted, trying to regain control of the room. If we can't trust them, we can't turn our backs on each other. We need to figure something out together. But that means risking it all. At those words, realization rippled through the crowd. Reed noticed some faces softening as others leaned in, contemplating the gravity of their situation. It wouldn't be simple, it wouldn't be easy, but perhaps they could walk the tightrope together. Then, just as hope began to rekindle, another voice shouted from the back, louder this time. Then let us put it to the test. Reed's breath hitched. That shout could either fracture them apart or ignite something new and powerful. Was that the stepping stone they needed? Which way would they move now? As the crowd surged with wavering courage, a chill ran down Reed's spine. Behind them, the officers exchanged uneasy glances, and Reed wondered, as he held his breath, if this moment of confrontation would lead them to true connection or to chaos. Would they dare to ask for real change and risk it all? The tension crackled like static in the air as Reed stood before the crowd, uncertainty swirling like smoke. Every face, every fear and hope seemed focused on him, waiting for a response. He felt like a lone candle against the expansive darkness of doubt. "Test us," he finally said, his voice resonating with a newfound strength. "Let us create a moment that fundamentally changes everything. If we can come together in this, we can forge a pathway toward reconciliation." The crowd murmured, doubt still lacing their expressions. Yet the weight of his conviction reverberated through the gathering. Could this truly be the turning point they needed? Mia stepped forward, her eyes locked on Reed's. What if a community meeting is just the beginning? How can we ensure accountability and action? We need to go beyond just words. Reed nodded, feeling a blossoming unity among the spectators. Let us sit together. Whether it's with the officers or community leaders, we need to establish a framework for ongoing dialogue. Right! Shouted Jamal, now catching fire from Reed's enthusiasm. Let us outline our demands. What does it mean to protect and serve? We want real change, not just a polite conversation. Yes. Came the echo from the crowd. It surged like a wave breaking against the shore, washing away doubt and uncertainty. Faces transformed, courage blossoming where hesitation once lingered. Reed glanced at the officers, now standing a measured distance away, their expressions mixed. The younger officer spoke first, his voice tentative. We could set up a community forum, a chance to listen and learn from each other. A real opportunity. You're serious? Jamal asked, scrutinizing them hard. Yes. We need to engage and understand your concerns about policing in this town. We can't become agents of change if we don't recognize our own shortcomings. The officer's words caught on the air, sounding sincere, hope ignited. And if you don't show, we'll hold you accountable as a community, Mia said. This meeting serves as a firm line in the sand. Count me in, said an older woman from the back, her face a tapestry of emotional scars and resilience. This is bigger than us. All of it. One by one, voices joined in, pledging themselves to the shift in momentum. Mia's spirit soared, glancing up to meet her father's eye. In that moment, the two shared a silent vow, that they were ready to fight, together. This wasn't only about accountability, it was about building their community back up from the ashes. This was the dawn of something that could transform their town. The murmurs from the crowd spontaneously coalesced into steady chants echoing around Reed. Let us do this. Together. Change starts now. Then, like magic, something began to shift in Reed. All the uncertainty that had once buried him felt light. Surrounded by this fighting spirit, he stood taller, feeling like a leader who could unite, a force for meaningful change instead of division. Raymond, standing at the edge witnessing this revival, felt the tide draw towards unity. His skepticism ebbed, a pulse of cautious optimism replacing the frustration. I'll watch, he called out, the challenge lingering in his tone. But don't think for a second I'll believe it until I see results. Fair enough, Reed shot back, determination etched on his face. Hold me accountable then. Let us all take a stand in front of each other face to face with our truths. An electric excitement charged the air. The crowd jostled around, a unified entity now, hearts beating in rhythm, ready to welcome change. Reed took a breath deep enough to fill every corner of his being. Then let us set the date. Let us not back down again. This is our time. The roar that met his words was like a tidal wave crashing against the unyielding shore, engulfing the town in its embrace. As they rallied, something profound blossomed within Charles, Mia's father. The voices of community, the energy of their struggle mirrored his own resilience knitting with purpose. He placed a hand on Mia's shoulder, and she turned to him, her eyes glistening with tears of hope. "We're not alone anymore, Dad," she said softly. "No, we're not," he replied, emotion choking his words as a smile broke across his face. "This is the change we've been waiting for." And amidst the swell of voices, as dusk began to blanket the town in a warm glow, a new chapter opened, one where strength was born from unity, where bonds transcended the hatred of old, where humanity lit a path through the darkness. Together, they sealed that moment with a promise, their lives entwined in a fight for justice, a commitment to rise, speak, and act. For it was more than just change, it was a resurrection of their spirit, a beginning of something beautiful. Now, if this story resonates with you, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming stories. Leave a like now to help us feed the algorithm and keep the momentum going. Comment below with your thoughts, reactions, and feelings about this emotional ending. We want to hear from you. And most importantly, share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the power of our community.